you can use business to do a lot of good in the world. And hopefully eventually that means business and good and our humanness is all tied together instead of maybe separated out.
Welcome, neighbors, to Hometown Earth, the podcast that brings a down-to-earth approach to all of your sustainability questions. I'm your host, Lena Sanford, here on the Believe Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network for professionals. Here, we believe that everyone can change the world. Do you believe? I'm a Midwest gal with big dreams to discover what it takes to reduce my impact on this beautiful place we call Hometown Earth. Join me every Tuesday as we navigate what actions we can take, big or small, to make a positive impact in your life and the lives of your neighbors on Hometown Earth. Hello, neighbors. I am going to preface this interview by saying, if you're able, you should make your way to your fridge right now and crack open a cold one because I am absolutely drinking a beer for this episode. Today, we get to hear from Jessi Kauffmann, who works on the corporate social responsibility team at New Belgium Brewing. Not only does New Belgium Brewing have an amazing list of beers to serve every taste bud, they are recognized as a leader in the industry for sustainability and social responsibility. And when I say leader, I mean the leader. They are now the 4th largest craft brewing company in the U.S. dedicated to proving that business can be a force for good. New Belgium is a certified B Corp and was the first brewery to join 1% for the planet, meaning they contribute at least 1% of their annual sales to environmental causes. The brewery has donated over $29 million to charitable causes since 1991. The list of things that this company is doing for the people and the planet is long and honestly just continues to amaze me. Their in-house processes are driven by innovation, all the while they're fighting for better climate policy, clean land and water, and providing spaces for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Truly, they are a company that is brewing beer for all. But like I mentioned, today we get the pleasure of chatting with Jessi, who has been with the brewery just over 3 years and has worn many hats in her time there, leading public and private tours, planning and executing events, running local social media, and has continued to demonstrate her diverse skill set in her current role by directly supporting the Director of Social and Environmental Impact, streamlining process efficiencies, and working to kind of tie the thread of New Belgium's human power business model throughout the company, both externally and internally. Jessi's passion for people and culture resulted in a triple major from Luther College in anthropology, Spanish, and international studies, and grew further through a study abroad semester in Lima, Peru, influencing her drive to empower people to better understand one another interpersonally, culturally, and societally. Outside of work, you can find Jessi spending time outdoors, climbing and hiking, listening to good music, and currently living out her longtime dream of living sustainably and intentionally in her own tiny home. And I am so jealous of this. That is literally like my dream. Jessi is seriously such a fun guest, and I'm so excited for y'all to learn more about the awesome work that New Belgium is doing. So without further ado, let's hop in and chat with Jessi. All right. So Jessi, thank you so much for joining us today on Hometown Earth. If you don't mind, just kind of introduce yourself and tell us what a day in the life looks like for you at New Belgium.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. So I work on our corporate social responsibility team. So right now, a lot of my focus is on basically making sure our impact and the work we do is communicated internally and externally. So within our coworkers, we're doing a lot of internal work to make sure that the work we do is amplified, but then externally too, to have our customers know, that we don't just talk the talk, we walk the talk too. So a lot of that means I work with marketing and I get to help strategize and create content that aligns with our values, but then also exemplifies the important work that we do outside of just making beer.
Yeah. Well, so is there any specific projects right now that y'all are working on that you're just yelling to the rooftops and making sure everybody knows about?
Yeah. So we do an amazing job at like grant programming that we don't talk a lot about. So we used to have different cycles of grants. And I helped with that before I was in this department too, reviewing and, giving some feedback. But we do like bike related advocacy grant programs. And that's something that we're building and just continuing to do. We've done it for a long, long time. And then specifically like beer related, one of my favorite projects I got to help a lot was with piano keys. Have you heard of that beer?
No, I haven't.
No? Okay. So there's a really great beer influencer named Ale Sharpton. He's based out of Atlanta. And his big thing like is to create economic empowerment for the Black community and making sure that we get craft beer accessible to all. So one of the beers that we released a couple times now, different small batches, is called Piano Keys, and it's Imperial Vanilla Stout.
Ooh.
Yeah, in Atlanta and in our tap rooms, and the money goes to different nonprofits that we help decide with Ale, and so that's been a really cool project to work on and just see the impact and see people love it, because a lot of people, Atlanta, at least the market, didn't have craft beer in the city itself a lot, so cool to be able to bring that there and invite everybody in.
Yeah. It's it kind of leads to my next question. So essentially y'all do a lot of work like socially, and you say that you're a human powered business. Can you explain a little bit about that business model and kind of what y'all hope to achieve with that?
Yeah. So human powered, kind of starts, it's like from top down, it starts internally. So it's, we take care of our people. We are people first. And that trickles out to we care about people and we care about the world, right? Because environment is where we live. And without that, we wouldn't be people. And so making sure that bringing business as a force for good is actually doing it for the right reasons and doing it to bring humanness and humanity into different business models, right? And so a lot of it now, kind of changing the culture of capitalism, getting away from just like profit-based marketing and everything, and trying to bring that humanity back in and making sure that everyone has access to it, because that's the hardest part. The more you get into that, the harder it is to actually give it to everybody. So that's one of the biggest things. And so that ties in a lot with our DEI work and our, of course, our sustainability, but community as well, kind of bringing everyone together to make sure, we can make it work.
Yeah. Make the world work with cold beer in hand. So
yes.
I love it. Well, so we've kind of talked before, like on the show, about the 3 pillars of sustainability. And what I love about New Belgium is I feel like that y'all are like right there in the center of all of those pillars, social, corporate, and environment, just intersecting to do like really awesome, sustainable work. So I feel like that lends itself a little bit to the values that you were talking about there. So if you don't mind, like, let's just kind of walk through those values that New Belgium has and just kind of talk about the awesome work that y'all are doing. So first off, the first one is like making beer for everybody. So you touched on that a little bit. But if you don't mind just kind of telling us like what beer for everyone really looks like in your eyes at New Belgium.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things is just making sure that we kind of build off of our history, right? So Fat Tire, we talk about a lot as being kind of a gateway into diversifying craft beer, because back when that came out, most people drank super light beers, extremely sessionable, not a lot to them. And so Fat Tire was a good midway point to allow people to try something else that wasn't super dark or super intimidating, right? Because Belgian styles, when Jeff made Abbey, it's a dark double, and that can be kind of a lot if you're only used to drinking lagers. So Fat Tire kind of does a really good job, and we've pulled this through, and our goal is to continue to do that, is to show that accessibility matters. So, you make something accessible, you make it approachable, you include everyone, and it's only going to open more doors. So that's a huge part of making world-class beer for all. And we just really try to make sure that all of our beers, we have huge, high standards for quality assurance, and we have an entire team of people that run our taste panel and help people, professionally do that. So making sure that everyone can taste it and know that it's going to be good too.
So is that, I saw on your website that y'all talk a lot about like democratizing your beer. Can you explain a little bit about what that means?
That's kind of, similar mindset, right? Like there's something for everybody. So making sure that the voices we get, like Ale, we don't make a lot of stouts, but he was talking about how in his communities and in Atlanta specifically, there aren't a lot of stouts. And so he wants to bring that there. We're like, awesome. If people have spoken, like, let's make it happen. And so same kind of thing, we want to make sure that you don't just come here and like, oh, they only make IPAs or something like that too.
Yeah.
Making sure that it's for everyone.
I do have my little Fat Tire. My partner keeps Fat Tire in the house. I'm not kidding, at all times. Like
Heck yeah.
So that's his favorite. And then I also have some Voodoo Ranger down there too that I like. What's your favorite?
What Voodoo is it?
Oh, I don't. It's I don't know. It's the IPA.
Okay. Yeah. Voodoo in itself now is kind of its own brand. So it has a ton of different ones. So I was curious if you had a favorite Voodoo, if there was one that you usually, it's like the classic or.
I think it's the classic. It's got the skeleton on the front. I don't know if they're all that way.
They all do, but he's wearing different outfits and all of them.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know that. Now it's like a Pokemon. I got to go collect them all.
It's kind of true. I mean, some of the design on that is incredible.
Yeah. So. I love, and I just saw that y'all are doing y'all do design glasses every year or two to kind of highlight local artists. I think that's really neat.
Yeah. So they're beautiful. But were you asking about my favorite beer? Like,
what's your favorite beer? Style, a specific, if you've got a specific one.
Yeah. It's really hard. But I love our sour beers. We do wood aged sour. So we, all of our beer has like real fruit, real ingredients. We try to make sure that it's like super authentic and based in just the truest source that we can get. And so our sours are made in our wood cellar. They're aged for 1 to 3 years. And so when you get the end result, every time it's different. And the one beer that we make consistently out of there, one of them is called Transatlantique Creek, and it's a cherry lambic sour. So lambics are beers that are made out in Belgium in a specific region that are like open air fermented.
Oh, wow.
That are really cool. And they're traditionally cherry, but different flavors. And so we actually ship it across the Atlantic, hence the name. Okay. And then we mix it with our golden sour ale that we make here. And that beer is like this beautiful, like deep red color. And it's sour, but like I like tart things. So that's my absolute, like probably number one. But Fat Tire is always good. So I can't say I can't pick that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of speaking on Fat Tire, another one of y'all's values is environmental change. And I know y'all just did a campaign that was really widely talked about, the Torched Earth. So if you don't mind kind of speaking on a little bit of the initiatives that y'all do to raise awareness about climate change.
Yeah. So for a long time, we did our own like just internal energy efficiency projects. Like we were the first wind powered brewery and have done a lot of things kind of behind the scenes, but talked about some. And as we've moved forward, we've realized that it's not enough just to do it ourselves. We want to encourage others to do it too. And so one of the biggest things was this Torched Earth campaign we just came out with. And it was kind of a fun, like, hey, what is beer going to be like? Let's like try to imagine it. And when we did, it wasn't great, if we didn't take care of climate change and the planet, because we're an agricultural like product, we make that. And so it was fun to be in those like sessions to hear about like, okay, well, what would we use then? And it's different kinds of ingredients that are used in beer now and are good, but what we think of beer now isn't what we would have. And so we called upon different organizations and corporations to enact some sort of climate goal with that beer being released. So, do you have a goal in mind? Do you have any targets? If not, why not? And, let's talk about it because, climate change affects every single person. And So the beer is cool. It's interesting. We when we sent it out and had people, you could buy it in the tap room. It was like non-refrigerated because there wouldn't be refrigeration. The
Oh,
different
no.
it was like hopped with dandelions and different non-malt malts and then like
Yeah.
hop extract to make sure that it's kind of that root, which we actually do use in current beers. So that's not kind of too far out of the norm, but yeah, definitely not something that I would
Yeah.
like pick up first choice, but yeah, we highlighted too that, though beer would be our last focus, if that,
Yeah.
was the world we lived in, it's something that really brings kind of the tangible nature to it, because the further we get from things, the more separated we are, the harder it is to actually see the full impact and the reality of it. So it was a way to say, hey, try this. It's a small release. Like, we want to see your thoughts and see, if this spurs action.
Did y'all see any companies kind of step up and say that they were going to make a plan?
I think naturally some companies were kind of already on that bandwagon. So
Yeah.
yeah, like yes, but also the biggest thing was we had like a button to tweet at companies. And so we saw some engagement there just from like consumers, being like, what about you?
Yeah.
And so we had kind of a list of different organizations and corporations that didn't have like a plan. And
Yeah. I think I saw it was like 70% of like Fortune 500 companies don't have
yes,
a plan. So that's
no,
crazy.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And with like the Paris Agreement, it's just, it's becoming more dire and more real.
Right.
And so we really wanted to make something that was a tangible example of that, not
Yeah.
just saying like, hey, do this. It's
Yeah.
important. So it
Absolutely.
was a cool campaign. It was, there's always fun ways to engage people. So that was a fun one.
And so your Fat Tire is the first certified carbon neutral beer.
It is. Yes.
What does that look like? What does that mean?
So essentially that means that alongside our already existent energy efficient, model that we have here in Nashville, we invest in carbon offsets. So it's one of the most credible ways to actually invest and become, lower emissions overall, because some of them aren't. So we make sure we pick super credible sources, and we essentially will invest in those offsets temporarily until we can really lower our footprint, because there's different scopes when it comes to carbon neutrality. So the first scope, is in our direct control. So that's anything that is on our site that we can work on, which we've done a ton, like solar, just like water saving. The list can go on for hundreds, of examples. But then scopes 2 and 3 are our supply chain and things outside of our control that right now, as much as we want to like find a hop supplier that also is zero waste or carbon neutral, it's hard. So investing in credible offsets is really our biggest thing right now. Not a long-term solution, but that's one of the biggest ways we're able to have Fat Tire be carbon neutral. And then Mountain Time is actually certified carbon neutral now as well, officially.
I'd listened that said whenever y'all were in the process of getting that to that point. And so I'm glad to hear it that, so now you got 2.
Yes, we have 2.
That's awesome.
So we're aiming to get the whole brewery, all beer brands by 2030 certified carbon neutral. One of the biggest things of offsets is, there are some that they'll talk the talk, and you research it and you realize that that money, you didn't actually go toward those really important projects that actually help reduce the carbon going into the atmosphere. So we try really hard.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You mentioned it a little bit. Like, we could not talk about all of the things that New Belgium does in one episode. It is insane. Exactly. It is insane, all the stuff that y'all do. So right now, I'm going to encourage everybody to go to your website and kind of check out as much stuff as they can. Y'all give tons of resources there. But what do you think are some of the, you've touched on a couple of them, but what do you think are the biggest drivers for that environmental and social change that y'all are trying to put forth?
Yeah. Well, first off, also tell them to visit the website, but then folks can also visit drinksustainably.com, no spaces or anything. And that website is specifically curated to talk about torched earth a little bit, but then they are bigger carbon neutral efforts. So very well done, like beautifully put together and great content, easily digestible too. So something that combines what we just talked about too with like our offsets or just, kind of our efforts toward bringing people together is our investment in a company called Indigo Ag or Indigo Agriculture. And they, in turn, invest in local rural communities and farmers because, as it's clear, the rise in kind of fast paced consumerism culture means that a lot of small town, farmers are out of work and not able to keep up with demand. And so one of the biggest things with our investment in them is regenerative. I can never say that word, agriculture. So that's driving economic prosperity for those farmers and making sure
Yeah.
that not only like the small towns and the rural communities are in a lot of need right now. And so if they're the ones that in the end can actually help us with climate change, like they're going to end up being the heroes of it, right? And so that's one of the things that's like a full circle. Like we're supporting people, we're supporting their local economies and the planet. And so it's all very intersectional. And so a lot of those folks just don't get what they need, especially the way kind of our economy is working in this day and age. So big opportunity for like a global solution that can start in small places.
Yeah. Is there any other ones? I feel like that other companies should be taking note and doing more. It just kind of blows my mind that they aren't. Actually, have y'all had any trouble New Belgium's been around for 30 years, and I feel like everything that y'all have done is kind of different and it should be the norm, but it's not. Have y'all seen any challenges kind of being in a beer space that's traditionally not very inclusive or, not very climate forward as far as their actions?
I think, unfortunately, just a lot of the issues that we talk about or we are passionate about have been politicized. And so that tends to be a driver for folks not to engage. And so we talk about a lot that a lot of these issues need to be depoliticized because they affect everybody. Like they're not just one side or the other or anything. And so beer is a huge catalyst for bringing people together, for conversation, for breaking down barriers. So we are unique in our opportunity here, right? A lot of companies that maybe don't make the same kind of product, it's hard to talk about things if they don't fit your brand, if they don't fit, your business sales model. And so we tie it into ours. And that's the biggest thing that I think like human powered business is trying to push forward, and why we're trying to encourage companies to land on that is that model actually puts people first instead of like money first, right? People over profit. And so that's the biggest thing. And any issues we faced, I think, is just kind of the pushback of like, well, we don't do that. It's like, why not?
Just starting a conversation there.
And we're lucky that Kim and Jeff, when they started, kind of had those foundations of people and the planet already kind of integrated. And so we like to use that as an example to say, you can start from wherever you are. You can start adding it in now, little by little. And I think, there's different companies that do great examples. Like Ben and Jerry's makes ice cream, but they do an awesome job of like their advocacy is amazing. And so you can use business to do a lot of good in the world. And hopefully eventually that means business and good and our humanness is all tied together instead of maybe separated out. Kind of that tangibility, like we talked about, the closer you are to something, the more you're going to care about it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, so you're just like flowing perfectly. Let's just dive into then what it means. Another one of y'all's values is that you do right by people. Does that mean internally in the company? Let's talk about that a little bit. What the culture is, maybe what y'all do outside of it to reach people and do right by them.
Yeah. So, that's the biggest thing is we do right by people. We want to make sure that we are not putting profit over people. We are putting the humanness and putting the human experience above that.
Yeah.
So a lot of things I've said about our community programs and different things are making sure that happens. And then internally, employee wise, we've always done a great job of taking care of our coworkers. The employee ownership program was something that, not a lot of companies did. And so we were able to encourage a lot of different organizations and corporations to use that model. And it's not always long-term sustainable for everybody. Like, we recently were acquired by Little World Beverage from Australia, and they're amazing. And so they want to keep living out our values. And so that's one reason that we're able to do that, is because we do we do right by people. We make sure that that's the focus when, things like employee ownership works for a certain amount of time, works for a lot of people, ends up helping a lot of people out, and then encourage change in other companies too. So it's internal and external. A lot of it is that, we make sure that our coworkers are a huge focus of our work and our care.
I love that. And I saw that y'all were awarded the 2021 Best Place to Work for the LGBTQ plus community. So I feel like that's got to be just such an inclusive and fun workplace, which is seriously just amazing, because that's another value, is to have a hell of a lot of fun. So can you just kind of talk about, just the community that y'all have there and why it's so important to build that community between coworkers, essentially?
Right. Yeah, we want to be a place where everyone feels welcome and included. And I think, like a lot of businesses, you work there long enough, it kind of becomes a little community in itself naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to make sure that our culture here is something that we want to grow, not just like fit. And so when we hire new people, some of our biggest, impact and goal right now is to get people that don't necessarily fit our culture, that or our community, that add in a ton of different experience and perspective. And we've always been super supportive of like LGBTQ plus healthcare benefits. Our doctor is trained in trans medicine. And so we have a lot of those things that are just like undercover supportive that like you might not work here and not know about. And then you get hired and you find out all these things that make you feel you're supported in who you actually are as a person. And that inevitably gives you more authentic relationships and allows you to be more yourself. And so we're still, we have a lot of work to do. So we're still, no one's perfect. And so we're trying to do a lot of like internal audit and work to see where we have gaps and where we need to grow. And the biggest thing with that is just making sure that we know that we're growing together, and trying to bring everyone to the table and give them a voice as well. So that goes with coworkers and outside, but definitely internally.
Yeah, I feel like that y'all are building like the best community of just like chill beer drinkers that are going to save the planet. Like I seriously feel like it'd be so fun.
I mean, and it's great because beer is fun, and beer is a great way to talk and communicate and just like share and connect. And so why not use it as good? If you were doing that, you're just like almost like a waste of space if all you're doing is selling and drinking beer. Like it's great. You can also just do that. But I think New Belgium as a whole has always wanted to do a little bit more. And now we're able to, continue to grow in all the areas. And I'm super lucky to work on this team because seeing all of that and helping bring it to life is huge. So we didn't talk about a lot of it for a long time.
Really?
So not on purpose, just like, we just did it.
It was just like, here's who we are, and we're just going to rock it. Yeah. I love that.
So yeah, trying to make sure that we do talk about it now more in a way that's like, you can do it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And so one of the other things that y'all talk about is letting your freak flag fly. So do you have any personal anecdotes about working at New Belgium that you've been able to kind of do that?
Well, I feel like, in general, I started behind the bar back in 2018. Yeah. So that was just a really cool experience of like a group of people that work together all the time and, would have retreats. And it really felt like a huge shift in like the classic culture of like, you're at this big business, you have to be super like formal and right when you start, they're like open book management. We talk about stuff. We want to make sure that you're taken care of. And so support is a huge thing. And so I feel like no matter what happened in our lives, like that was always supported.
Yeah.
One of a funny story that's not necessarily my own, but my boss, who's the director of social and environmental impact here at New Belgium, lives next door to someone who was the nanny for Kim and Jeff and like some of the old original employees. Uh-huh. And so she had a lot of stories about those days, right? But I remember her telling me that one time she then Annie had asked him, like, what made this successful? Like, how did you get this to work? And she said, well, I just hired all the weirdos and let them do what they were good at. And so
Yeah.
I feel like that's still so true. Like, I feel like I got hired and I was like, do they really know what they're doing here? And then it turns out, yeah, because everyone's like weird and
Yeah.
great. And we try to bring everyone's voice in. That's one of the big things is like, letting your freak flag fly at a Tour de Fat and you have some great ideas, like keep that going, bring them up, like go up to your boss or someone higher too. And, so yeah, I think Tour de Fat's a really good example because it's a time where people are just together and, having a blast, and, it gives back too.
Is it every year? How often do you do that? Kind of who do you give back to?
Yeah. So, Tour de Fat is usually annually. It's changed over the years. It was smaller, it was just Fort Collins, and then it was in a bunch of states. It was free, and then we charged for it for a minute. And then of course, COVID, we didn't have it last year, but, it's a huge, essentially bike nonprofit fundraiser. So tons and tons of money is given to different organizations that support accessibility in the biking industry, sustainability, the list goes on. And so it's, right now, I think this year it's going to be in Asheville, Tempe, Arizona, and Fort Collins.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's just kind of grown and evolved throughout the years. But excited they were doing it again this year because we weren't 100% sure with everything. So
yeah. So anybody can go to that?
Anybody can go,
yeah.
21 to drink, but it's a super fun, like there's music, there's contests and prizes and always great food trucks and just events. It's kind of like a big beer festival. One of the most fun things too is a giant parade of bikes that basically clogs up the entire town of Fort Collins.
Oh my gosh.
And it's everyone in their costumes are encouraged. There's no theme necessarily, but just happens that way. And I think that's a big example of like letting your freak flag fly, but for a great cause. Like you're doing fun stuff, but you're also doing it because there's a really big message behind it. So we like to do that. Why not have fun while you're making a difference? Like life's too short.
I was going to say, I feel like that it is so heavy sometimes talking about climate change. And so to be able to have a community of people who are all kind of working towards the same goal, but are also unique. I just feel like that is so valuable. And a lot of people could really learn from what y'all are doing, whether like me as a regular person, I'm like getting ideas even from just like how y'all are operating. So what ways can people get involved with any kind of environmental social change with New Belgium? If you want to just share a little bit of tidbits there.
Yeah. I mean, it's as easy as just making some choices in your own life. If you decide like, I don't know, the easiest things that like you start doing individually could be just like thinking about when you buy things, like what is it in, what is that going to go toward in the end result? And so with beer, like buying New Belgium beer is always a great, option. But I think for a long time, people thought sustainability was like a marketing fad, and we're jumping on board because of things like that. And we actually see the data that it's people are investing in companies that make change. And a lot of people say, oh, are you sure that makes a difference? Like, how do you know? And it's like, no, we're seeing that the spending, like our sales are showing that folks and customers will spend money where impact is. And so
where true impact is,
where true impact, authentic, credible impact. And so that's a big thing, like check people's receipts. That's something we say a lot. Like we need to make sure people can check our receipts and we show what we're doing. We don't just say we support the LGBTQ community. We don't just say we want the rivers to be cleaner. We like go out and do it. We do community days. We, do carbon neutral work. And so really just choose brands and choose spending your money where people are doing things that align with your values, with environmental change or social equity things. So there's a lot of really great ones.
I love that. Well, so is there anything on kind of the horizon that we should be looking out for New Belgium?
Well, one thing is that we're working right now on, we usually put out like a Force for Good report that essentially tells about, kind of everything we're doing. And a lot of the times in the past, it's just been super heavy, like fact-based. And so this year, we're going to make a website coming down the line called Brewed for All. And so you can take a peek at that. Hopefully that'll, be up and running soon. Kind of like Drink Sustainably, just going through, what we do and why, and really showing why, because we can talk about it all day, but if you don't see the impact and the actual effect, that doesn't matter. A big thing coming down the line is Beer to Queer. Have you heard of that beer?
No. Huh.
Yeah. So for National Coming Out Day in October, we're releasing, this is the second iteration of the beer, but called Beer to Queer, like BIEREDE, and then queer, kind of a play. We like to make, we had a Beer to Mars and different beers like that. So essentially that money goes toward, LGBTQ nonprofit, and it makes sure that it's spread out equally. And so this year it's kind of a campaign around, making sure that coming out is something that whether or not you're able to do, that you feel safe and supported. And so that we're going to have some cool new merchandise and different items that support that. And so it's kind of like piano keys, right? We're trying to make sure that people feel included and have a voice at the table. And so more to come on that. That's going to be a really fun beer release. So
awesome. Yeah. I can't wait to see that. I'm excited. Yeah. So is there anything else kind of you want to share about what's going on at CSR team, or anything about New Belgium in general?
Yeah. I mean, in general, I think that we're really lucky to do what we do. I feel really lucky. Starting in this brewery, I was like, always looked at the CSR team like, oh, they seem so cool. Like they're doing some really important work. And that's where I want to be, that's the stuff I care about. And so the fact that I get to do that is incredible. And so something that's kind of a fun fact, I guess, that's maybe a little nerdy talk is CSR stands for corporate social responsibility. And a lot of times that has been like a stepping stone to get us to this day and age of like enacting that work and showing our receipts. And so the words we use a lot of the time, like my title would be like ESG generalist. So it's actually called environmental social governance. And so that's more along the lines of our carbon neutral impact and our different things. And there's this Forbes quote, and I don't know if I have it here, but they talk about CSR and ESG use a common aim, but we want to have ethical and sustainable business practices. But ESG is a little more strategic and more efficient. And so in our department, we do both. Like we are ESG, we are CSR. And so that's something that's it's really cool to see that, because this department kind of formed out of people who, it didn't exist for a long time. A lot of people who cared about these things. And there's 7 of us.
Yeah.
So in the 3 categories, we work in with sustainability, community, and DEI. And a lot is happening, and there's a lot that's going to be coming down the line and coming out. So I think that the biggest thing is we want to make sure it's how we connect to these causes and leverage our brand in a way that's truly meaningful. That's not just, saying, here's who we are and we did this. It's like, no, we really care. We really want to make sure that our impact is meaningful and lasting, not just something that we do for fun, So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's even true, because it's like, okay, so you're wanting to make beer and you're wanting to like have a legacy of beer to last longer, and the earth has to be here.
Right.
So it's like, that's why it's so pressing. And you kind of talked about that earlier, but like, seriously, like you can tell that y'all have a goal in mind, and that is to really make an impact. And so I'm just so thankful to be able to drink New Belgium and to kind of keep up with what y'all are doing. So I really do appreciate you hopping on with us today.
I was going to say, I forgot to mention, with the carbon neutral, we have our carbon neutral toolkit that our engineers and our sustainability team is working on. That event essentially will go out to breweries and different companies and say, here's how you do it, because we're not a place that does something and then it says, well, we figured it out, you should figure it out.
Yeah.
Here's the tools, like literally here's step-by-step how you become carbon neutral. And so that's been a huge project that we've been working on alongside of our other, environmental impact strategy. And so huge deal. I'm super stoked about that. We kind of did a similar thing with like quality assurance in beer. Back in the day, we like wrote like a guide kind of, and a lot of breweries now follow that.
Really?
So we're hoping that this kind of has that same effect of, you can do it. It's accessible. Like we want to make sure that everyone can look at this and say, oh, I make a difference if I do that, or.
And that's not just for large breweries. I'm assuming it's for small, like any brewery that's kind of even mom and pop.
Right. It should be, you should be able to look at it and get, fit it to what you need to. So, that's a big project that a lot of people are spending a lot of time on, and they're all amazing, super smart humans. So
that's what I'm like. Sometimes I was going through just like seeing all the work that y'all are doing. I'm like, who is like the brainchild behind all this? And it really is just like everybody coming together.
Everybody.
Yeah. I love that.
As this team, like there's only 7 of us, and 2 of us are in Asheville, and it's like, we're so intertwined and working to be even more intertwined with every other department that it's like, as things come up, we're like, oh, we want to do that and that and that. And it's like, okay, got to come back down and see like what's realistic. And most of it's just really intertwining all of it through the rest of, the company. And it's already kind of there. So we don't have a lot. We just support. A lot of support, a lot of just really great collaboration with other coworkers too, to figure out like those beers, that we're able to have an impact and a cause behind them. So making sure that program gets built out, because Voodoo Ranger already does a great job. We actually we pay influencers on Twitch to play games and drink Voodoo and support us. And we actually partnered with T-Pain recently, which is a really funny, I think it's incredible, because his whole deal is to make sure that people on Twitch, like Black gamers, get paid, as much as anyone else. And so we are directly supporting his initiatives. I know. So that's one thing that our brands, you don't just have to be like a beer that gives an impact. You can be Voodoo Ranger and have this larger brand, and we do this cool gaming thing. It's kind of this initiative that, if you look into it, you see that, but also we like to have fun and play games and support people in the same way. So.
I feel like that's so freaking unique. I just am constantly, I keep saying it, but I'm like constantly in awe of y'all. It's just so neat. And now all I can hear is T-Pain's auto-tune, just like Drink New Belgium in my head. I love it.
We were joking about different like parodies that he did on Saturday Night Live that he could do with us with beer, and that was the whole thing. But it's awesome. And thank you so much, for letting me come on and talk about this.
Absolutely.
And it's been a pleasure, and we could talk for, I'm sure, days. There's so much. I
know there's so much
we do.
Well, I will be sure to link everything in the show notes as always.
Awesome.
All right. Well, are you going to go enjoy a cold beer this afternoon?
I think I will in a little bit. Yeah, I got a little more work to do, but then I'm sure I'll head down to the Liquid Center, which is what we call our tap room, and
nice,
chat with some people. Yeah, it's a center of all of the amazing libation, so why not call it something weird?
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jessi, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, and cheers.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Hometown Earth as much as I did. Let us know by rating and subscribing so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week on Tuesday. Head to the show notes, linked in the episode description, for more details. And let us know in the comments what you want to hear next. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Believe.com and @Believe Podcasts. And you can find more about the podcast on Instagram @Hometown Earth, or connect with me personally @Lena Saintford. We all know change needs to happen, so let's get started right here at Hometown Earth.